They called her a punishment, not a bride, not a person, just a lesson to be taught. When they dragged Lila into the courtyard that morning, the whispers burned worse than the sun. The chief's son had humiliated her, mocked her weight, pushed her into the mud, and when she dared slap him, the whole village turned on her. Ungrateful, they said. Disrespectful. And to make an example, they decided to give her away, to the poorest man in the village. That man was Elias, a quiet farmer who lived at the edge of town, far from everyone else. He was tall, dark from years under the sun, his hands thick with calluses, his clothes worn to threads. He didn't speak much. He didn't protest either when they told him he'd be taking Lila as his wife. He just nodded once, eyes unreadable, and led her away while the crowd jeered. The laughter followed them down the dirt road. Lila kept her chin up, but her heart felt like shattered glass. She had always been the subject of jokes, too big, too clumsy, too loud. Now she was a disgrace handed off like unwanted livestock. When they reached Elias's small cabin, she braced herself for the worst. Filth, hunger, cruelty. But instead she found something unexpected. The little wooden house was simple, yes, but clean. A garden grew behind it, bursting with vegetables. There was a small barn, a few chickens pecking near the door, and a single cow grazing by the fence. "You'll sleep here," Elias said quietly, leading her to a room with a small bed. "You can rest. I'll start dinner, that was it. No lectures. No demands. Just calm." Lila stood there, unsure how to feel. She had expected anger, mockery, or lust. But he barely looked at her. He just went about his chores, silent and efficient, as if she wasn't the woman the village had forced upon him. That night they ate in silence. The stew was surprisingly good, simple, earthy, warm. Lila hadn't realized how hungry she was until she finished 2 full bowls. Elias only gave a small nod when she thanked him. Days turned into weeks. Lila began to help around the farm. At first she fumbled, dropping buckets, scaring the chickens, tripping over roots. But Elias never raised his voice. He'd just quietly fix whatever she broke and keep working. Eventually she started to learn, and as she learned, something strange happened. The more she worked, the more she felt useful. Her body, the one everyone had mocked for being big and slow, turned out to be strong. She could carry water buckets farther than most men. She could knead bread for hours without tiring. Her laughter returned, not the nervous kind that hid her shame, but a deep, hearty laugh that filled the little cabin with warmth. Elias would glance at her sometimes when she laughed, his lips twitching just slightly, like a smile he tried to hide. One evening, after they'd finished harvesting the corn, a storm rolled in. The roof began to leak, and Lila ran outside to help Elias tie down the haystacks. Rain drenched them both, and when the thunder cracked, she flinched. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her close. For a moment, their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. He let go quickly, muttering, "Go inside before you catch cold." But that night, neither of them slept. It was around that time Lila began noticing things that didn't add up. For a poor farmer, Elias never seemed to struggle. The fields were always fertile, his tools always new. He'd sometimes disappear for days, returning with fine fabrics, spices, or books. And there were letters, strange envelopes sealed with wax, written in handwriting too elegant for a villager. One afternoon, while cleaning, she found one left open on the table. It was from a lawyer in the city, addressed to Lord Elias Marin. Her heart nearly stopped. "Lord," she confronted him that evening, trembling with confusion. "Who are you, really?" she demanded. "The village said you were poor. But this says you're—" Elias sighed and sat down. For the first time, his calm expression broke. "I was born into wealth," he admitted quietly. "My family owned lands beyond this valley. But when my brother betrayed me and took everything, I left it all. I wanted to start again, live as a man, not a name. Then why let them treat you like some beggar?" "Because pride destroys faster than poverty," he said simply. "And I've seen enough destruction." Lila didn't know what to say. She looked at him, really looked, and realized she didn't see a poor man or a lord. She saw someone who, like her, had been judged unfairly. That night when she went to bed, her chest ached, not from shame this time, but something warmer, deeper. Weeks passed. The harvest season ended and winter crept in. Lila made scarves from old fabric, baked bread, and kept the house warm. She'd sing softly while working, and sometimes Elias would pause outside the door listening. Then one morning a carriage arrived. The horses were fine bred, the coach polished. Out stepped a man in a fine coat, the same brother who had betrayed Elias. "Little brother," he sneered, looking around. "So this is where you've been hiding? With the village's charity case?" He cast a cruel look at Lila. "They said you married a fat peasant girl. Seems they were right." Lila froze, her hands trembling, but Elias's voice cut like steel. "Leave her out of this." "Oh, I'm not here for her," the man said, smirking. "I'm here for the land. It's still in your name and the crown's buying. You sign it, I get my share. Easy." "I won't sell," Elias said coldly. His brother laughed. "Then stay in your mud hut, but when they come to seize it, don't say I didn't warn you." He turned and left, dust kicking up behind the carriage wheels. That night, Elias sat in silence, staring into the fire. Lila hesitated before speaking. "You could fight him," she said softly. "You could reclaim what's yours." He looked at her, and for the first time she saw pain, real pain in his eyes. "What's mine?" he murmured. "Everything I owned was built on greed and cruelty. This farm, this peace, that's what's mine now, but fate had other plans." 2 weeks later, royal messengers arrived with documents confirming Elias's ownership of not just the farm, but thousands of acres surrounding the valley. His father had died, and by law everything reverted to him. The same villagers who once mocked him and her came crawling with gifts and apologies. They called her lady, bowed when she passed, praised her grace. Lila didn't care for any of it. She remembered their laughter, their cruelty, and how they'd treated Elias as worthless. When one woman tried to compliment her, saying, "You've become so beautiful now that you're rich," Lila only smiled. "I was beautiful before," she said calmly. "You just couldn't see it." Elias overheard that, and that night, he finally spoke the words he'd held back for months. "I thought they gave you to me as a punishment," he said quietly, standing beside her by the fire. "But you've been my greatest blessing." Lila turned to him, eyes glistening. "And I thought I was being punished too," she whispered. "But you taught me I was never the problem." He reached for her hand, rough against soft. "Stay with me," he said. "Not because they said so, but because you want to," she smiled. "I already decided that long ago." Years later, their land became one of the most prosperous in the region. But neither of them flaunted their wealth. They lived simply, helped others, and gave work to the poor. People began calling her Lady Lila, but she always laughed and said, "Just Lila is fine." Whenever young girls came to her crying over their looks or their weight, she'd take their hands and say, "They called me a punishment once too, but remember this. No one decides your worth but you." And in the evenings, when the sun dipped behind the golden fields, Elias would sit beside her on the porch, watching the world they'd built together, born not from wealth or beauty, but quiet strength. Because sometimes life's cruelest gifts hide the greatest grace, and sometimes the punishment is the miracle you never saw coming.